We're still very much open as the Rose Art Museum, and one of our most enormous pleasures is to partner in events like this. You know, when the history of the Rose gets written, I don't know who will write it, but when that happens, I hope whoever does write it will cover broadly to me personally, but to the history of the museum, the extraordinary collaboration initiated by Mark Auslander and Andreas Teubler, collaborations here over recent years at the Rose. It has been such an enormous pleasure for us to engage with these scholars and gentlemen in a variety of ways. I thank you so much, you guys, for what you've done, really. Let's give these guys a They have been effusive, bubbling with ideas, and enormous generosity, bringing in their students, whom I also salute and thank. So thanks, you guys. This is another step in our ongoing collaboration. I welcome you all, and thank you for coming, and I would like to introduce and hand over the afternoon to Mark Auslander. Thanks.
Thank you, Michael. It has been, I'm Mark Auslander. I teach in the anthropology department and the cultural production program. This is the strangest of times. It continues to be a joy to work collaboratively with the museum staff, with the wonderful artists, including Steve Miller and many others, who have worked in the collection and on display in this wonderful institution. And it's also a chance to really demonstrate, we feel, what a university is all about. Expanding our areas of knowledge, doing what contemporary art forces us to do constantly, which is to re-examine the very ways that we see the world. And this day, this extraordinary day, Darwin Day, which is a global celebration throughout the world of the 200th anniversary of the birth of Charles Darwin and the 150th anniversary of the publication of On the Origin of Species, is an extraordinary global opportunity to come together and really ponder the intersection of all the things that, in a sense, make life worthwhile, the intersection, the entanglements of science, of arts, of the greatest aspirations of the human spirits, and the interesting intertwinings we sensed of art, of the creative process, and scientific thought. There are many wonderful quotes from On the Origins of Species, a great work of literature as well as science, but it's really, I think, the very close of it that I think inspired, in some ways, this commentary. Thus, and I'll just read it aloud because it's one of the great phrases in the history of science, and reminds us that the contemplation of art and the constant traffic between art, literature, the world of letters, and scientific thought was self-evident to the Victorians, of course, and echoes in very fascinating ways today, even though we have all sorts of bifurcations, all sorts of debates nowadays between the values of science and the values of the humanities, between the seeming dichotomy between art and financial value. But let's just spend a moment thinking about this famous passage. Thus, from the war of nature, from famine and death, the most exalted object which we are capable of conceiving, namely, the production of the higher animals, directly follows. There is grandeur in this view of life, with its several powers, having been originally breathed into a few forms or into one, and that, whilst this planet has gone cycling on according to the fixed law of gravity, from so simple a beginning, endless forms, most beautiful and most wonderful, have been and are being evolved. So to stand in this gallery for the exhibition, Master of Reality, curated by our colleague Joe Wardwell, and to look, at all these works, but perhaps especially at Matthew Day Jackson's fabulous towers, which allude in so many ways to the history of evolutionary thought intertwined with the work of the imagination, a work that we're going to return to, I think, from time to time throughout this afternoon. There are many interesting intertextual allusions to the works that to this work that we'll talk about. but the various sort of paradoxes of the way that mapping the cosmos, moving back and forth in time, and contemplating the work of the imagination in summoning up new worlds, new visions of past, new visions of possible futures. All of this is consistent in many ways with the remarkable work of Darwin, who we will continue to think about today. So we're going to move back and forth between an art historian, between literary scholars. We'll hear about video games and zombie flicks. We have the artist Steve Miller with us as well, and we'll look at some actual art as well as reproductions. So we'll begin with my colleague Nancy Scott in our Department of Fine Arts, which has been, Nancy has been at the forefront of the sort of ongoing struggle to, and we'll be hearing some about that, of course, more in the weeks to come. But Nancy Scott.